Hello, how are you doing? This is Dr. Rodrigo Rodriguez, Medical Director of BioCare Hospital. And I'm with you and I'm hoping that you are doing very well, particularly in the area that I have to deal with. I hope you're healthy, because if you're healthy, you have wellness and you have joy in your life, because that's the secret formula. You will never enjoy your life if there is no wellness, and wellness will simply not happen if we are not healthy. And for those of you that already know me, you know that I'm always trying to bring a message on how to deal with disease, how to manage disease, but very importantly, how not to be sick. In other words, what can we do to prevent, to go around it, to continue go on with our lives and just enjoy till the last day of her life. I had a patient that once told me, and that was very wise, she said, doctor, I don't mind dying. Whenever God thinks I should go, I'll be happy to go. But why do I have to be sick? I mean, what do we or anybody gains by me being in a hospital and having to go through painful procedures and huge expenses and a lot of suffering before I die? She said, I'd be very happy to die whenever. I don't want one more day, but I'd like to have my life free of disease. And that's something that moves me, that has moved me before and ever after that comment, because I know that there are a lot of things that we can do to keep good performance and healthy living. After all, we're not different than anything else. And if you mistreat your plants, or if you mistreat your pets, or even if you mistreat your car, you're going to end up having a troubled pet, a wilted plant, or a piece of junk instead of a very good performing car. It's exactly with us. We have to do, and that has been my message over and over again, what can we do to be healthier? What can we do to be better performing? And today's message comes with a little bit of dismay. Sometimes I feel that are really the circumstances tougher or much higher than what we can do? Are they going to end up defeating us and make all of us sick? And if you look at the numbers, they're somber. They're not encouraging. Let no one tell you that we're healthier or living longer than ever, because that's not true. In fact, 2/3 of American population, 2/3 are either obese or overweight. That's probably the biggest epidemic American population has today. And hand in hand with that figure, we have 50% of people diabetic or pre-diabetic. They have enough information, enough reasons to believe that they're going to be, down the line, full-fledged diabetic people. So those numbers are not encouraging. A good amount of metabolic and inflammatory diseases like allergic reactions, autoimmune disease, and a lot of these things are growing at an alarming rate, 3 to 9% every year. That means that we're kind of doubling the number of allergic people every 20 years, which actually, that is backed by statistics. We double the number of allergic people every 20 years. And if you turn on the TV, you're going to see that ads to tell you how to deal or control the problem are all over. Nobody tells you how I can avoid it. But yes, they tell you that this is happening, and this is what you can take, and this is what you can do. So, to make things worse, actually, life expectancy in America is coming down for the first time ever since numbers started being recorded. We always thought we were going to live longer than year before. But for the first time, those numbers are beginning to decline. We're not living longer at the best. We're not expanding our possibility of longevity. We're either stopped or rather beginning to go down. So when you look at all these numbers, when you look at all these conditions, then you wonder, what is happening? Can we really change all this? Or in fact, the challenges are a lot bigger than our possibilities to fight them off, to defeat them. Are children going to live shorter time than what we are supposed to be living? Am I going to go to the burial of my children because they had a heart attack when they were 50? Or they developed cancer when they were 40-something? And we don't seem, I don't see anywhere where things are becoming aware of that. But those numbers are out there. You can go to the Centers for Disease Control and in Atlanta and prevention and look at the numbers. In this time, you can go to your phone, to your computer, to anywhere and get hard numbers about all these facts that I mentioned. So we have to do something. We definitely have to do something. Yes, for me, but more important for the future generations. One of the problems that I see, which is at the same time one part of the solution, is that this whole scenario is being developed in the Western world, in what we call the modern industrialized societies. In other words, we're not looking at the same numbers if you go to other countries of the world. Even, let me give you a simple example. You might say, well, of course, if you live in the center of Africa or in the center of the Amazonian jungle, you're going to have a total different environment and things are going to be very different. But who wants to live there? Well, let's go to Western industrialized societies that can show different numbers. And one of my best examples is Japan. Japan is right now one of the countries where life expectancy is the biggest. People work well into their 80s and they seem to enjoy a good health status. Furthermore, if you look at numbers, for example, of specific diseases like breast cancer, the difference is important. Breast cancer is much lower in Japan than what it is in the United States. So as I tell you, that is important because that might be the beginning of some answers. What these people do in Japan, or what these people in Japan do not do, that can make a big difference in our health, in the way our bodies function, in our life expectancy. So when we look at those differences, we begin to understand what we can do or what direction we could take. I was this weekend visiting a family, and the parents were a little bit, I wouldn't say upset, but yes, confused. Because two of the girls, one 12 years, the other 15 years, decided they wanted to eat and live in a total different way than their parents live. They didn't want big portions of meat. They were not vegetarian, but they ate very little meat. They would not take meat more than 2-3 times a week. They would have more fish. They would have raw vegetables. They would be juicing. They would be exercising. They would be doing cleansing. They would be drinking a lot of water. They had completely done away with sugar and refined flour. They changed their lifestyle in a very important way. And the funny thing is that when I visited them, the parents said, "Oh, I'm glad you're here. I want you as a doctor to talk to them and tell them that what they're doing is unhealthy. They're not having meat every day. They're not having the huge amounts of protein that we feed our children today. They're being very frugal with the amount of food and very choosy with the types of food." And these two girls look beautiful, look absolutely beautiful, as a 12 or 14-year-old, 15-year-old people can look. My mother used to say, nobody is bad looking when you're 17. And of course they were beautiful girls, but very healthy. And this has been proven. I mean, there are a lot of studies that prove that when we are more conscientious with the lifestyle of our children develop to be much more, because they're going to be all they can be. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. Because the other somber problem that we have around us is the chemical assault, which is beyond our hand. I always tell you that most of the important answers are within reach. But what are we going to be doing with what's beyond our reach? Like the chemical assault that we're receiving every single day of our lives. This is going to be a very important program. I want to share it, but I want you to keep on listening to me. I am Dr. Rodrigo Rodriguez, Medical Director of BioCare Hospital. And today, like on every podcast, on every blog, on every opportunity I have to talk to people and tell them about what you can do to prevent illness and to be healthier and to live longer and be happier and just enjoy your life with a lot of wellness and health. Well, we're talking today about the figures that sometimes bring dismay and I don't know, sometimes things look a little bit somber, and my question from the beginning is, will the challenges be bigger than our capacity to fight them? What is happening? Life expectancy going down? 2/3 of the population overweight or obese? Half of the people either diabetic or pre-diabetic, and a huge number of allergic, inflammatory, autoimmune diseases that are always on the rise. You say, what is going to happen to our people? What's going to happen particularly to those that come behind me? Because I had my time, I enjoyed my life, I had the opportunity to live in a world that was probably a lot easier than what it is today, in spite of what many people might think. This is we're going through very troubled times, and my question is, then what is happening? And it is very important that we pay attention to all these things, because this could be very critical. Of course, diet and lifestyle play a very important role in everything that we're saying. of course. I mean, I'm not going to take anything out of the importance of our lifestyle and food supply. But on the other hand, there are a lot of forces that go beyond our capacity, that are not within our reach, that apparently we can do nothing about it. So you say, what are those? Well, they are how our whole world and environment, and particularly our food supply, has been surrounded by chemicals that we didn't ask for, that we do not wish, that we reject. But we're constantly assaulted by this chemical world that we don't want, but we pay for it, because there's where our money is going. I'm talking about chemicals that come in our food supply, in packing, in preservation, in coloring, in flavoring, in everything. I mean, there's no way. You look around, and sometimes I feel a lot of dismay, because I say, how can I get away from this? Where do I run? The other day I was thinking, and you can tell me in your comments if you think this makes some sense. I was thinking, if I could only make it in such a way that we all discard all our plastics, everything that's a plastic, a bag, a cap, a bottle, anything that's a plastic. If I could only get people to get plastics in a special container to be recycled, that would be a big win. Because I would be taking plastics out of the garbage, out of the soil, out of the oceans. You know, it is considered that by the end of this century, the plastic mass in the oceans is going to be greater than the living mass, than fish and everything that's in the ocean. By weight is going to be less than the amount of plastics we have there. So if we all were to pick all our plastics, and that's of course up to cities, up to city halls and people to say, let's create a department that's going to pick up all the plastics, put them together, pick them in every house, and send them to a different place. I was talking before about differences in how we live and how other countries live, and I was putting the example of Japan. If you go to Japan, the recycling process, the disposal of garbage is so well balanced, is so well, I could say, choreographed, that each and every different part of garbage goes to a different place to be recycled, to be used, to be discarded, whatever. But they take very good care of garbage. We don't. Suffice to tell you that if you walk right now out of in any of your city streets, you're going to bump into a plastic bottle or discarded plastic bag or a plastic cap or anything like that. The problem is that all those substances are plastics that are going to be there forever. Long after you and your children and your grandchildren are gone, that plastic garbage is going to be still in your ground, in your environment, in your water fountain. So we have to get rid of plastics. That would be the number one thing. And let's be very honest. The big industry is not after your health, it's after your wallet. So I heard once that in the past, people would race against something taking a gun. But in today's time, what we have to do is take our wallets. And the industry is going to go wherever we take our wallets. So, don't consume plastic. Don't use plastic. Be very conscientious about it. Bring a paper bag, bring something to do your groceries, just like the old times. And plastics are many times in places that you don't even see it. Let's say, for example, you buy something in a carton because it's more recyclable. Well, the lining of that carton is a plastic. Let's say you buy a can. A metallic can should be completely recyclable, but it also has a lining of plastic. And then, as I tell you, I have some dismay because sometimes I wonder where all this is going to stop, or how can we stop it. And the best advice I can give you is, at least in your personal life, in your family life, make sure you buy glass, not plastic. Make sure you buy fresh. Make sure you buy local, because then you don't need packing. You don't need transportation. You don't need chemicals for preservation. If you're buying cucumbers from your neighbors, you're saving the world a lot of chemicals. And the more we do it, the better off we're going to be. And the industry will have to go that way. I remember the times when somebody started saying, I'm buying organic. And we all looked at this person like, that's a little weird. What do you mean by organic? Because they led us to believe. Many of us bought the idea that the new ways to make food were more productive because we could create a lot more food for all our people at a lower cost, and everything will be a win-win situation. Well, years later, all we know is that chronic inflammatory diseases, allergic diseases, autoimmune diseases, heart, number one killer, cancer, Alzheimer's, and all these diseases that are self-inflicted, they didn't happen from the outside. They were not traumatic. They were not produced by a bug. They were not produced by anything but because of things we put in our mouth that we were breathing or that were surrounding our bodies. And those, in a big part, were chemical substances. So, if we choose to go a different route, if we shift our path to a healthier way of life, we're going to be at least protecting our people. So, be very careful, be very frugal about what things come in your house that have been preserved or pre-cooked or flavored or salted or preserved, or right now you can buy apples in America that have traveled 2,500 miles. Think of all the gasoline and cars and energy that was spent just to bring you one apple. When we could, as we used to do, just waited for autumn. And then we have them in our backyard. We have become a little bit spoiled society. You want mangoes and you want them in Alaska. And you want them in January. So they have to come all the way from South America or from Southeast Asia. But how much costs the world and your own health to bring that mango over there? So let's be more conscientious. Let's be more responsible. And the most important part is, let's begin working with our children. You're going to be surprised if you sit with your children and you tell them about all of this. Because thank God I have found a lot of young people that are beginning to be more conscientious, more responsible, more inquiry, and they start making healthier choices. So talk to your children, talk to your family, talk to your friends, and see what you can get rid of in order to have a healthier living. Live longer, live healthier, and function better. But that's not the end of the story. There's a lot more, and we're going to continue talking about it. You're with Dr. Rodrigo Rodriguez, Medical Director of BioCare Hospital. And today we're talking about, as we always do, what is happening to our health, what's happening to managing our diseases, what is happening to our life expectancy, because we worry, we're concerned about those situations. And we have talked many times about food and lifestyle and ways to be healthier and live longer and bypass the possibility of being sick, etc. But there is a very underappreciated factor in our health, our whole health. Healthcare, health maintenance, health everything. There's a very underappreciated driver in that is all around us, which is the environmental toxins and chemicals that are really they're really disrupting, because they can affect our hormonal system, our neurological system, our metabolic system. They can affect just about every system in the body. And the big problem is that most of these chemicals and most of these toxins not only are underappreciated, but they're invisible. Invisible until it's late. In other words, we don't see them. We actually enjoy them. I mean, because all the flavoring and all the coloring and all the gimmicks they give you to get you to buy something or to consume something, this is really like a drug pusher. They give you food that looks better and tastes better and so forth by the use of chemicals. Because they know that once you're hooked, you're going to continue to consume those. And that's what I was telling you. You have to be very aware, because if we take our wallet to a different situation, to a different location, everybody is going to follow that route. Because what they really want is our money. So wherever our money goes, they're going to go. This I said 45 years ago. And it has turned to be true. I always said, if you have healthier choices for food, you're going to see changes in the food industry. And that has happened. It has happened indeed. I can go right now to my next door market and get organic food, organic produce, free range organic eggs, grass-fed organic milk and milk products. You know, I don't know if you remember the time, but only, let's say 25, 30 years ago, I know there was like a network of producers in the United States that you'd have to contact and try to get from those producers a box of something. Sweet potatoes or some produce, but you had to program it very carefully, and it was It was everything but cheap, but at least you had access to that. Well, people started doing it. And the more they did it, the more it grew. And in America today, you can go to almost every single market around you and get good quality food. But you have to choose. You have to keep that in your mind. Next time you go shopping, you have to make sure that you're getting organic, grass-fed, cage-free, etc. type of products. Because that's going to bring a life where you're limiting the amount of chemicals and toxins that you're bringing into your life. Remember, those substances are disruptors of your functions, of your hormones, of your nervous system, of your whole well-being and survival. That's why they're called toxins. Toxic is the word Greek for venom. So you don't want them in your life. But if you begin to do these changes, then you're going to see better results. There have been new studies because thank God we evolve, we continue to do things, and there have been very important studies, particularly in Europe, but also in the United States, where they have followed people that choose organic over other type of food. And they go to the market and they claim to look for organic, good quality or better quality food. And you know what? The numbers begin to show the truth. These people have less illnesses and better longevity. It's kind of early because remember that all these movements started just about 50 years ago when we stopped eating healthy, when we thought we had our cake and we could eat it too, when we thought we were entitled to a lot of food and to do whatever we wanted with our body, because after all, we had a doctor, we had a pharmacy, we had a hospital that would solve the problem if it ever came. But actually eating a lot of food, it was much better. I remember the times very distinctly that people were proud to have 3 eggs with a lot of bacon and sausage and ham and a lot of fat and particularly margarine and vegetable oils, and then they thought they were having a great breakfast. And let me be very clear, there's nothing wrong with having eggs. There's nothing wrong with bacon. There's nothing wrong with anything that I have just mentioned. But the overwhelming amount, that is the problem. Actually, let me say it right now. If you go to the market and look for cage-free, free-range, organic eggs, and if possible, fertilized, you can have your eggs and be healthy. I had a patient, let me tell you this little story. I had a patient who could not eat any eggs because his cholesterol would go up. So when he came to the hospital, he told me this story. He told me, you know what, I cannot have eggs because my cholesterol goes up and I love them. What can I do? I said, well, let's do something. I'm going to give you 2 eggs for breakfast every day. If your cholesterol goes up, you will not pay. Oh, he took my offer in 2 seconds. And we did it. And when we checked his cholesterol, it was just as good as ever. And he said, what happened, doctor? I said, I gave you free-range, cage-free, fertile, organically fed eggs. So it's not eggs, what is the problem? Is what kind of egg are you buying? If you buy an egg from a hen that is in a cage, taking very controlled diet so it can produce a lot of eggs with a light 24 hours a day, so it can produce up to 2 eggs every 24 hours, yes, you're going to have a bad product. But if you have the eggs that that hen, because of a divine order, produces, you're going to be healthy. And I could tell you on and about all that. What about milk and milk products? Well, let's review the thing. It's very simple. Cows are supposed to be grass-fed, not grain-fed. See? Because the way they're ruminants, they're a type of animal that can eat, that should eat fresh herbs. They should be grazing. You see the pictures. I mean, like in Switzerland, which, by the way, Switzerland has the most better looking cows of the world. Even the eyelashes look like in the cartoons. They're beautiful animals. And just because they roam, they are grass-fed, and they take care of their lives. I mean, they're healthy, in one word. So if you're eating products from a healthy cow, from a healthy hen, from a healthy whatever, your food is going to be healthy. So we have to choose. And I was telling you, the numbers are showing that people that choose those foods are living healthier and longer. And this is going to continue going on. And you will remember my word. When we review all these figures, let's say 50 years from now, you're going to see that those people that chose to eat smaller amounts, choosing better the foods they ate, and trying to keep a caloric balance between the amounts of foods they ate and the amounts of calories they needed for the day, you're going to see how these people look slim, healthy, and beautiful. It is really that simple. So yes, on one hand, my dismay is because we cannot control the whole environment. I cannot control the huge amount of fertilizers. Think for a second how many millions of pounds of chemicals go into your food production. Fertilizers and pesticides at the top of everything. And then you get that food and you eat it. Well, if I open my Bible and go to Leviticus, that's not what the Bible said. It said the best way to have a good crop is not using a fertilizer, is let the land rest every 7th year. So I tell you, you don't have to go further than your Bible at your night table. All you have to do is open those things, read all that information, and you're going to find a lot of answers. And you're going to see that what I'm telling you is really supported by the order that we were giving to be healthy. Let's have one more segment. Let's keep on talking. Share it, please. My dear friends, you're with Dr. Rodrigo Rodriguez, Medical Director of BioCare Hospital. And in today's podcast, I have tried to bring information about things that seem to be completely out of reach, out of our control. And in many ways, yes, that's true. In many ways, the chemical pollution, the huge overload of chemicals that surround us and are actually contaminated our food supply seem to be uncontrollable, seem to be beyond anything that we can do. And sometimes we just take a side and and say, well, there's nothing we can do. We have to live with it. But then you turn to other societies and you see that there are many things that we can do. And I was putting Japan as an example. And then you say, well, I have to be more careful. I have to avoid plastics. Plastics are probably the easiest thing to fight because just don't bring them to your house. Don't buy them. If anything is in a plastic thing or plastic lining, because remember that it might be deceiving, a carton or a can might be lined with plastics, well, try to avoid those things. And the best way to do it is by eating and buying fresh food. And if it's locally grown, it's a lot better because then you're not transporting it from one place to another, which you might be bypassing a lot of preservatives and chemicals that are used to give the product a shelf life or the possibility of transportation through miles and miles, thousands of miles. So many times we're eating food that has traveled 3, 4, 5,000 miles before it reaches to our table. So be careful. Then choose what you have at home. Choose plastic, plus good quality cooking utensils. Choose things that do not contain plastics. Avoid chemical coating like non-stick surfaces and plastics in cooking utensils. You can go for simple things like wood or bamboo. Right now it's kind of fashionable to use simple utensils made out of bamboo, which will not scratch your cooking utensils and still are a lot more friendly to the environment than the chemicals. And once again, it's not just saying I want to be friendly with the environment. No, I want to be friendly to my body. I don't want to bring things that the body doesn't need. And of course, goes without saying, avoid the outright use of chemicals. Be careful in how you do your dishes. Hot water is probably one of the best ways to do it with a tiny little amount of soap. Once again, when I walked through the supermarkets in Japan, I saw the liquid soap to do the dishes were little bottles like this because they use a tiny drop, because they use the water mainly to cleanse. Number one. Number two, they don't use too much fat in the first to begin with. So they cook a lot with water, they simmer, they steam, they do all these things, which are very, very healthy. So that's what we have to do, is we have to look back into our life and say, what can I do? And the same way I'm telling you non-stick surfaces, don't use non-stick chemicals to clean or to make sure that everything works well. So if you buy oils in a spray, at least make sure you're using like olive oil, an oil that's going to be friendly to your body, not a vegetable oil. And if you start making all those changes, if you start buying all those things, what's going to happen is, number one, they're going to come down in price, as they have indeed. Organic food used to be very expensive. It is becoming more and more within reach for everybody as time has gone, because the production has gone higher. And yes, make sure you buy good quality chicken, make sure you buy good quality eggs, make sure you buy good quality milk and milk derivatives and real butter and olive oil and lard, because those things are natural substances. They didn't go through a factory like vegetable oils. Vegetable oil comes from a factory. Olive oil does not. Lard does not, because they're natural. And like something important to tell you is that the fatty acids in olive oil are very similar to the fatty acids in lard. So I know some people might have some concerns about using lard, but then you have olive oil as your perfect choice and perfect option to do things. So we have to make changes. Don't bring home your enemy. Don't buy chemicals that are supposed to keep dirt from furniture or things that are going to fire retardants, and all those things can be toxic to your body, particularly if you have small children, because they're going to go and lay down on the couch or on the carpet that you have protected with a chemical spray, because then things will not stick to the carpet. Well, if you're concerned about those things, then use plain hardwood. Nothing is going to happen. Or buy a natural skin. You can have a sheepskin for your toddler to play in, but don't use chemical substances. A lot of the carpets today and furniture covering is made out of chemical fabrics. So don't bring them home. And the more you do it, the better off you're going to be. Buy cotton, buy linen, buy silk. If you look at silk, and if you take a second look at silk, you're going to see that silk is really inexpensive if you know where and what to buy. Because you're not going to buy the beautiful quality, luxurious silk. You're going to buy many times what is actually almost discarded, but nevertheless it's silk. So you can buy a dovet, for example, for your bed or for your children's bed, which is going to be very inexpensive. You're going to be surprised because those are made with the leftovers of silk, but silk nevertheless. So go the natural way. Choose the things that are going to create a healthier world for you. And something that is absolutely important is that we take our children and teach them. But as I was telling you, I'm seeing more and more that it is our children that are beginning to get the idea and come home and tell us, why are we doing this? And thank God they're beginning to question what we thought was a great lifestyle. And they're beginning to question why we eat this, why we eat that. But if we can encourage that, if we can help them, if we can say, be humble enough to say, okay, my son, okay, my daughter, yeah, you're right. Let's sit and talk about it. And if you feel better by making these changes, I'm going to completely support you. They're going to be proud, but they're also going to be encouraged to continue on a quest for a healthier life, for a better situation. And I will never stop telling you that I am your friend, that I love you to click and ask and call and review information about these subjects. You can have very specific questions. You can have very specific doubts. And let me tell you, it is more important that you ask that question than if you just think, well, I don't think it's going to be, this is going to be a silly question, this is going to be dumb, I don't want to look bad. No, there's nothing as a silly question. But there can be silly, very important mistakes. So in order to do this, sit down with your family and say, why don't we discuss this subject? Why don't we write down our questions? Why don't we call Dr. Rodriguez or send him an email and review all this? That's number one. But second, I would appreciate very much if you follow me, if you follow these podcasts, and we have a podcast that can be transferred into a PDF. And that PDF is never longer than one single page. And in that single page, we summarize the whole subject. Like today's talk about toxic chemicals in our lives, you can get it in just one page that summarizes everything that we have talked. That you can read, you can print, you can bring it to friends and family and say, just take a look at this, just read this. And if you're interested, I can tell you where you can get a lot more information. Because educating ourselves is the only way we're going to find to solve a lot of the problems that we have in health. And not only that, but is going to help us to be healthier, live longer, prevent and bypass deadly diseases. Cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, diabetes, overweight, obesity, high blood pressure, kidney disease. All these illnesses are costing us a lot. They're very costly in terms of money, in suffering, in pain, in family disruption. And we don't have to go through any of that. Just share it with everybody that you love and make sure you ask a question. I'll be next time with you.